Hey guys, it's Angelo, and today we're having a look at the best possible corruption effects to use as a discipline priest in World of Warcraft's patch 8.3. Corruption effects in patch 8.3 can change the damage and healing output of a class dramatically, and this is no different for the discipline priest. In this video, we'll be going over which corruption effects are the best on the disc priest, so which ones you'll definitely want to be going for and why. We'll discuss the reasoning behind their effectiveness in both raids and Mythic Plus, and we'll talk about which ones are better in what situation. We'll talk about how much corruption you will want to be playing with as well, which breakpoints to keep in mind, and what you can do to easily counter certain corruption effects if needed. Now, if you too want to join the discussions about corruption, if you need help or advice which can't be answered in this video, or simply want some other opinions, be sure to join our Discord server where you can gain insights from other priests and myself. Good, now that being said, and without any further ado, let's go right ahead and have a look. Now, what needs to be said first is that there's something important to keep in mind when looking at the corruption for the discipline priest. Unlike a DPS spec, which would want to look at the DPS gain per 1 point of corruption, healers need to focus on the actual utility and effects which the corruption brings with it. There's a bit of wiggle room here for the disc in comparison to other healers, as the discipline priest needs to focus a lot of its time dealing damage in order to heal. So, even though corruption effects do not count towards your atonement, but more on that later, we find ourselves with many corruption effects which deal damage being quite useful for us. All in all though, what is most important is the healing throughput increase you can potentially gain with the different corruption effects, and while watching this video, you will see that the most of our best corruptions are simple stat increases and multipliers. Fortunately, item level does not scale with any of the strong corruption effects for the discipline priest, so you won't have a dilemma like the DPS specs would have with a low item level infinite stars corruption for example, even though it may be on rank 3. I've explained this in my Shadow Priest corruption video, and if you would like to see that, the link should pop up on the top right corner of your screen now. Good, that being said, let's dive a bit deeper and take a look at which effects you'll want to use. Alright, now we're going to split up the best corruption effects into both raiding environments as well as Mythic Plus. The effects will not be ranked in order, as it is not guaranteed that you will have all of them at your disposal, so view this list as a list of effects that are all good for you and which you'll want to try and have available. For raids, we have Severe, increasing your critical strike gain from all sources, Siphoner, which grants you percentual amount of leech depending on the corruption level, Expedient, which lets you gain more haste from all sources, Ineffable Truth, which increases the cooldown recovery rate of your spells by a percentual amount for 10 seconds, depending on its level, Void Ritual, which is a secondary stat increase over time, and Racing Pulse, which is a formidable haste proc. Optionally, as well is Deadly Momentum, which is a critical strike proc and is also pretty good to use. Your best ones out of these options are definitely the Leech, the Crit from all sources, and the Haste from all sources when it comes to your healing output. Leech is always incredibly strong for the disc, and raids aren't any different. When it comes to Mythic Plus, some of these options are also very strong, like Siphoner and Severe, as well as Expedient, while others, like Infinite Stars or Twilight Devastation, are good as well since their damage output is very high. In Mythic Plus, our damage output is very important, and both of these deal a very formidable amount of damage in different situations. Even though both do not scale with our atonement, which is very important to mention, they're still great to use. A few things need to be mentioned though, and firstly, Void Ritual gets the most benefit out of at least 2 people in your party or raid using it, meaning you'll want to try and use it if only you are not the only one who is playing with it. Infinite Stars is purely single target, and again does not count towards your atonement healing, meaning its only benefit is some raw damage in Mythic Plus. Twilight Devastation also again does not count to your atonement, and after this week's targeted nerf, loses its strength when fighting against more than 5 enemies, but it is still of course very strong. Now last but not least, let's discuss how much corruption you want to play with, and how to deal with certain corruption effects. The answer for this is relatively simple here. Your corruption effects have two important breakpoints which you'll want to try and play around with. The first important one is at 40 corruption, which is when the Thing from Beyond will spawn. The Thing from Beyond should easily be manageable by you in and of itself, so it should not pose a problem. It can be feared and knocked back, but with your absorption effects and ambient healing through Atonement, you'll find that the Thing from Beyond proves little to no threat by itself. The next breakpoint comes at 60 corruption, which is when you'll start suffering from the Cascading Disaster, meaning that if the Thing from Beyond strikes you, you'll immediately trigger an Eye of Corruption and some Grasping Tendrils. The Grasping Tendrils will actually begin affecting you with any relevant corruption level, but unfortunately for you, they can be dispelled as they're a simple magic effect. Ultimately, I wouldn't advise you playing with more than 59 Insanity though, or rather Corruption, as you will want to try and stay away from the Cascading Disaster if possible. This will come down to your personal gameplay and skill though, and if you feel you're comfortable with that much Insanity, or if you trust the other healers in your raid enough, then by all means you should play it. Entirely up to you, but personally, I'd play with nothing above 59 Corruption. Again, that is just me personally. Also, be sure to utilize your cloak if needed, as it will cleanse you of all negative corruption effects once every 3 minutes. Alright my friends, I hope that this video gave you some helpful information about corruption effects on the Discipline Priest, which effects to aim for and play with, and hopefully you already have some of these effects or will have them available soon. Let me know your thoughts. Any effects that I didn't mention yet you think are very strong? How much corruption are you currently playing with and are okay with? Be sure to let me know in the comments below or on Discord with the link to our server in the description box below. If you have a question for me, be sure to ask away in the comments or in the Ask Angelo Discord channel, where I pick out some questions each week to answer. Special thanks as always to my supporters over at Patreon, and thank you so much everyone for watching. Now, have a good one my friends, enjoy patch 8.3, and I will see you all in the next one.